Hello and welcome to the Secret Society of Man podcast. My name is Zach. I'm here with my cousin Ryan. Over a dozen states are suing TikTok, essentially over the addictive nature of that app. They named a couple specific things. The fact that you can just sit there and scroll endlessly through content. I mean, you can get sucked into a black hole and spend entire days just flipping through shorts. And then also the fact that the filters will set unrealistic beauty expectations for kids, and it starts to lead to body dysmorphia and dissatisfaction with themselves. All the things that makes the app so successful, states are sort of throwing a fit over this. And this is probably not the first time that you've heard something like this. Probably for 5 years now. I remember back when Trump was in office, they were trying to ban TikTok. He signed an executive order where he wanted TikTok to be banned, and ultimately 2 judges blocked that. And then after that, different individual states tried to ban it. So Montana did a campaign where they tried to pass a law on the state level saying that TikTok can't advertise or have the app be opened anywhere in Montana. And once again, that was shut down. The opposition for this type of thing is coming from the fact that, they're trying to ban TikTok. They're citing the issues with the app that lead them to want to ban it. But instead of proposing specific solutions and changes that TikTok can make while still being able to operate their app and operate their business in the United States, they're just jumping straight to, we're going to ban it. We're going to get rid of it. And that's sort of deemed unconstitutional. You can't just sign an executive order to shut down a business. It seems like it's the true meaning behind this legislation is to make TikTok go out of business, not so much to fix the issues with the app.
Do you know where TikTok originated from?
With China.
Yep. Right? So big thing on this, I remember I was watching a C-SPAN, C-SPAN, they have all day, they have those interviews, or, you can watch people and they're questioned, right?
Yep.
It was either the CEO or some big wig with TikTok on there. Can't remember his name, but he's like from Thailand, okay? And they kept asking him what is your goal with China and distributing to the US, TikTok to the US? And he's like, I have nothing to do with that. Like, my job is basically just to make sure the app is running fine. And they're like, well, can you tell us about your ties with China? And he's like, well, I'm from Thailand. He's like, I know the company's from China, but they just pay me to do my job, basically. And they're like, okay, but tell us about what China's trying to do to the U.S. with TikTok. And he's like, I don't know. I'm from Thailand. My point to this is that I think there's a lot of scare other than, or behind this ban, right? So I think there's a lot going on with people are like, hey man, is TikTok dumbing down not just our kids, but people in general, okay? China has a limitation on their people using TikTok, okay? That should tell you something. Also, TikTok is very addictive. We've talked about this. Kind of the same concept as Cocomelon, right? People swipe, probably spend no more than 3 seconds, and then they swipe up, right? They just keep going. It's like Tinder, but with videos. They just keep swiping and swiping, and they just keep going, right? And I think there is a serious problem with it. From what I've heard and seen, I personally do not have TikTok right now. Never did, because I was afraid that I would get too enveloped in it, I guess. But again, where's the problem? Why aren't we banning McDonald's then?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
My point to this is I think a lot of it is because it's China based. If this was US based, dude, it's a U.S. business. We don't want that to shut down. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So I thought of that angle as well. Just kind of talk about the China thing at first. Yeah. So that is a major angle that they were taking originally, is that this is essentially a program that is being used to spy on the American people at worst as like almost like a surveillance operation, but at best, the information's being sold to China, right? Definitely that's true, okay? Because in China, the government has the right to purchase a 1% share of any company, and that 1% share in the company gives them some level of say in the operations of that company. So, the government and private corporations are intertwined over there, and so there is that influence. In addition to that, companies also have to have a committee within their company that is dedicated to like advocating for the interests of the Communist Party over there. So there absolutely is, Chinese Communist Party, Chinese government influence in the company that runs TikTok. Now, whether or not they are doing a coordinated attack on the American people by trying to gather as much information or socially engineer us by feeding us shitty content. I mean, you can speculate on that, but the government has come out and said that that is a motivation of their legislature here or their proposals for this legislature. They haven't released any sort of findings on that publicly. So as of right now, we don't know how deep that actually goes, what proof they have.
Right.
But we can bet that the information is being sold to the Chinese government, or our information is being sold to other Chinese corporations. And like you said, I mean, nowadays, how is that different than any other company? I mean, have you ever noticed that more and more things are free nowadays?
Without a doubt.
The reason it's free is because we're paying with our information, right?
Correct.
So to try and, at this point, stop your information from being stolen, that's like having your car be stolen and you call the cops and say, I have to stop my car from being stolen. It's already stolen.
Right. Yeah.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Your information's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was a debt collector, one of the things that we would do is if we couldn't get a hold of somebody, we would go on the system. We all had access to it, a company full of scumbags. I was just an 18-year-old kid, right, making $30,000 a year, and I could log into my computer and I can pull up anybody's information, their social security number, their cars, their criminal history, their credit score, all of that same information about any of your family members or close acquaintances. Like I could literally pull up a list of who are most likely to be your best friends just because somehow they have that information. Like that information is out there. When you apply for a loan, the banks sell that information to everybody. You can, if you apply for a mortgage, I have to tell my clients to be prepared for a bombardment of phone calls because as soon as you submit that inquiry on your credit report, the credit bureaus just sell that information to as many banks as possible. That's how all these companies make their money. So at this point, as much as we want to maintain our privacy, there's nothing we can do about that. And I think that this China thing is just a scapegoat.
Yeah. Like credit card companies, like our credit is pretty good, like really good. And dude, we get constant like Capital One in our mailbox, like activate this credit card, like you've been approved, or you do well on your payments for your mortgage. Next thing you know, your mortgage being sold to another company that now owns your mortgage, right? Like just constant, like, and I think for people need to understand too, like it's not just TikTok, kind of what you were saying. It goes to like Facebook, like it goes to all these massive companies. They know every single thing about you. They absolutely do. Like you said, there's websites that are available to the public that you could search your first and last name and you could find your address. Yep. You could find your phone number. It's available to everyone. It's free. And you can even find like some relatives that are like related to you and their phone numbers, you know, like, so it's scary to see where this is continuing to go. And maybe TikTok's going to set the precedence for other businesses to be like, hey, if they can do it, why aren't we doing it? Or if we are, like, what can we do to hide in the shadows easier without getting noticed? Like, what are they doing wrong that we won't do?
So they're sort of like proposing solutions to that. And in this case, the most recent attempts at this is not just an outright ban, but they're essentially trying to force a sale to an American company. And the idea is that the American company will have like our best interests in mind compared to China. But why would we ever think that an American company is going to have a better intent for the consumer than the Chinese government? Like,
Right.
I mean, people outcry over companies like Facebook and stuff all the time. So, we don't like our information being stolen. I guess most people don't like our information being sold to random companies. But let me ask you this. There's companies out there that are like VPNs. You know what that is?
Yep.
Yeah. So, like Surfshark and things like that.
Yep.
Every YouTuber has this
Yep.
as a sponsor, right? And it preys on people's dislike of their information being sold. And it's just to preserve some idea that you have privacy in a world where you don't. But even if you had a choice, like, have you ever really cared, besides the annoyance of getting junk mail, that your information's being sold? Like, what am I going to do with it?
No, like when I play Xbox, like EA Sports makes you accept, like not a contract, but like you have to scroll through at the bottom and hit accept, and in there is part of like we share your information with third parties. But at the end of the day, you have to accept it to play the game.
Yeah.
So like, I'm gonna accept it because I just spent $80 on this game.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they kind of get you in that loop too, and it's easy for people to be like, yeah, sure, like I'll accept it. It's not gonna hurt me. Like it's not like I have people knocking at my door every freaking day. I have people knocking through my phone every day, scammers and other people calling like robocalls.
Right.
But I mean, I can just block those or some other way, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know. I think TikTok will survive, because bottom line is, like, what happens if China's like, fine, like, I'll tell you what, we'll just remove TikTok from your country only. I feel like that honestly is another thing that you could think about. Like, China could get this so addictive that if the U.S. bans it, China can come back and say, look at what your free country did. Your free country got rid of our social media, and you're like one of the few countries on Earth, you and North Korea, that don't have this. And what do you and North Korea have in common now? That you're censoring different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they could spin it that way. Be like, I thought you guys were a free market, like what happened with this? And now you're controlling what people can watch? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it would be controversial. But I feel like this whole move, and even if this is something that doesn't even get passed, because, again, they say, it's going to be banned in January, but this could very well be overturned again. Mm-hmm. This whole thing just reeks of pandering to, like, boomers, people that don't understand technology. I remember that, I think it was a CEO or like one of the higher-ups, not the CEO, but one of the higher-ups, I think it was in Facebook or Google, had to go in front of like the Supreme Court and was being questioned, and being questioned by people that don't understand how phones work, right? And it just leads to stupid questions and stupid concerns, and if there is any concerns, it gets muddled up by just the fact that the people asking the questions don't understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. And if there's any sort of political like clout to be gained here, it's with parents that just don't take the time to understand what their kids are engaging in, and they just think that everything that their kids do is bad. Mm-hmm. And I think that we need to ask ourselves, again, like with that Cocomelon discussion, at what point do we need to tell the parents to just ban it within their own household?
Sure.
Like, why, if you want your kid to stop using this and you think it's harming your child, why would you say, well, I hope that the government passes legislation so eventually this gets banned, when you can just limit your child's access to it yourself?
Right.
And I guess, I don't even know if the right move is to ban it within a household. I mean, if you're a parent, you got to realize that even if TikTok it doesn't exist anymore, all that same stuff is available anywhere else on the internet. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you can watch cartel assassination videos on the internet, right? I mean, you can look at all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And whether TikTok is there or not, your kid's still going to be out there if you're not paying attention to what they're doing, and they're going to be able to see all sorts of stuff you don't want them to see. When I was in third grade,
here it is, flashback.
Like way before TikTok even existed. I was at school and one kid told me to go home and look up penisland.com. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You go to penisland.com. It's penisland.com.
Oh,
it's like,
no,
there you are,
dude. Did you do it?
Yeah, with penisland.com. You got to know what's on here. And, you kind of knew, I think I'm about to be tricked, but
and you
don't realize
whoa.
it till you do it. Yeah, and it's like the can of worms open,
Yeah.
And so there's all sorts of things that your kid can look up now. And so it's your job to, regardless of what the government does, to protect your kid, to like guide them through using these tools, because it's going to be there for the rest of their lives. Even after TikTok is gone, there's going to be an even more addicting app. And you got to help your kid learn how to navigate that.
Yeah, and I mean, think about what these kids are doing when you're not around, right? Like when they get to that age where they can start using the remote control, right? Stuff like that. There are going to be times where you're going to have to trust your kid to like manage themselves, right? And that comes with parenting, of teaching them in the first place what they should and shouldn't be doing. Now, I'll tell you a story, okay? I used to deliver pizzas, okay? Won't say for what brand, but I did. And I'll never forget this. My boss had a TV up in like the Wild were like in the playoffs. And he's a huge Wild fan, so he brought like a 40-inch TV in the kitchen and remote controlled, like remote from his cable. Okay. So like he plugged in this little thing and he's using his cable account on this TV so we could watch it.
Okay.
So I'm standing there and I'm taking the pizza out of the oven, right? So take it out, put it on the box, and I look up at the TV and all of a sudden I see the guide pop up. And I'm like, I looked at my boss, I'm like, what's happening to your TV? He's like, he's watching it, and it goes through, and it goes down to the pay movie channels.
Okay.
And it clicks on Minions, and all of a sudden you see the click for like $16.
Okay.
And he started dropping some words, dude. Turns out his kids got the remote and changed it and bought a $16 movie, and he was flipping out, dude. And so I guess my example, or the reason for that, right, is these kids are, like you said, each generation is getting better with technology at a younger age. I suck with technology, but my littlest sister, she already knows how to like essentially crack into a phone if she needs to. Like, how'd you do that? So that's where I stand on that. It's kind of my story with like kids and kind of getting into that. But
one thing this reminded me of is, in video games, there's a lot of like loot box sort of systems now, right? So like, you can pay. It used to be like you pay $10 and then you would get like DLC, right? And you'd kind of know what you're buying. But then at some point along the way, they figured out that they could have it where you pay $5 and you have a chance to get what you really want, but then you might just get some bullshit, right? And it's like a gambling type system, and it feeds on the same thing that any other gambling system feeds on in the real world. And this became highly controversial as it became more popular. And in the outcry, some countries did ban loot boxes, and that never happened in America. But it's a similar topic because, here we have something where kids are sort of being addicted to these loot boxes, and they banned it so that way kids weren't being taught to gamble and like sort of being brought into that system at a young age. But again, gambling still is going to exist. And so whenever they become 18 and they're able to gamble themselves, well, now they're still going to go into it, and they're just as easily going to fall into that gambling addiction as they would be if they started when they were kids. And in America, that's obviously not banned. And so, that's our job as parents is to figure out, well, what are they interested in? What are they spending money on? What is this platform, TikTok, really like? Is it as bad as they say? Find out what they're watching, and then, help them figure it out.
And I think a lot of it too, kind of going off of the spending thing, I think a lot of people, do you know who Dave Ramsey is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been watching him since high school, and I will never forget back in like 2012. He's like, mark my words, businesses will start to be short on cash, and almost everything you do is spent through plastic or your phone. And he said the reason for that is because psychologically, it's a lot harder to pass 5 Benjamins over the counter than it is to tap your phone or tap your card. So I think there's also that, like, spending online for kids, like the V-Bucks or something. Like, it's a lot easier to put it in. It's kind of cartoonish, like Fortnite or something. And it's easier to spend because you don't feel that paper in your hand crossing over and being like, yeah, this sucks. Like, you ever had to pay for a car, like I told you, we paid $3,400 for it.
Yeah.
Bro, if I had to pass over 34 Benjamins, dude, I would probably sell the car. I'd say we're not doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Think
sure.
about that.
I had bought a car in cash, by the way. It was like $6,000, and you show up with $6,000. On the way there, you feel like a fucking baller. Yeah, you are the man on the way.
Yeah,
there.
dude. Yeah.
But then when you have to hand it over, you feel like a chump.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's totally true. But yeah, and then with the what do they call them, like microcurrents or microtransactions, like those digital
like Call of
currencies
Duty
they
does.
have.
Yep.
You don't just spend. It doesn't say $5 is what this
Right.
costs in the game. It's like 500 of whatever the thing is in the game. So it's like 500 coins or whatever, and that's just another degree of separation. So yeah, they have those psychological tricks to get you for sure, and that is interesting, man. It is a lot easier to hand over your card to buy something than it is to hand over cash. Because I'm somebody that I am not on top of my finances on the level where I'm not logging into my bank account like every day. And since I get paid like irregularly, if I haven't got paid in a couple months, like the less money I have, the less likely I am to open up my bank account app because I'm afraid to see the number.
Yeah.
But I'll just like hand over my card because I can buy the thing, but I don't actually see the money go, and I'm just like, oh, good, it approved. Okay, thank God. We must have some in there.
Yeah.
But
True.
if most people don't just look at their bank account every single day. They're not keeping tabs. People don't balance a checkbook anymore. It used to be if you're balancing a checkbook, you would know if there's like some money missing, and that's how you figured out. I could have $100 coming out of my account every month, and I wouldn't know that that's happening.
Yeah.
Like I probably have a dozen subscriptions just that I don't even use anymore.
Imagine how much skinnier society would be if you went to a restaurant and before you received each food item, you had to pay individually for that food item. So, like, if you're like, I want 10 boneless wings at B-Dubs, and they're like, okay, that's $17. You have to pay for it there. And then you're like, well, I want a basket of fries. Okay, that's $6.50. Okay, and then you hand it over. Like, you'd be like, wow, that adds up. But you don't really think about it. Yeah, and then the tip. But then you don't really think about it until after the fact, and you're like, you look at the bill and you're like, holy crap, dude. Like, when we went down to Nashville, they did the same thing, dude. It was like $17 for one alcoholic drink.
Yep.
So you order 5 or 6 of those, bro, you're already looking at almost $100. Like, holy crap, dude,
Especially if you just give the bartender your card ahead of time. And
the tab. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you see it all at the end. Man, if you had to tip out of cash, I know people probably still do this or whatever, but with how bad tipping's got, that would not have happened if people were still tipping in cash. No. Because right now it's so easy where like they just spin it around and say, oh, we're going to ask you a question. And now I don't do that
40%.
shit. 40%. I don't participate in that. If there is a waiter involved, I will tip that person just like normal. Waiter or delivery person getting a tip. Anything else besides that is not getting a tip. But now it's like so easy because you already put your card in. You don't have to do anything else. It's as easy as pressing the skip button. You're just like, I'll just do the 10%, whatever, dude. And that stuff adds up. But if you had to reach back into your pocket and hand over more of your money, people would they'd rather slap the person than give them more money.
So do you think TikTok will eventually introduce microtransactions?
Well, what have they been doing? The only time I go on TikTok is to post our videos on TikTok. I never really found it that engaging. I like to search for what I want to watch. I don't like it to tell me what I'm going to watch. But they have like a store in TikTok. So it's called TikTok Shop. And you can, like, I don't know exactly how this works, but I think that if we wanted to engage in that as content creators, we could go find a product and we could, I think, like, buy it and then tell people how good it is and basically choose a sponsor. We could just, like, decide, well, we're going to sponsor this shaving cream, right? And we could try to make a video that gets people to click on it and buy it, and we would get some kickback.
Oh.
So they do have different monetization things. Oh, another thing that they were pointing out is something that they want changed on the platform is I guess people can do like live streams on TikTok.
Okay.
And you can buy some kind of currency to like tip the people, right? So like if you want to tip this person you like to watch, this streamer, right? Then you can tip them with the TikTok dollars or whatever. And they say that it ends up being the verbiage that I saw was a virtual strip club, because there's girls dancing on there and shit all the time. So you can guys will just be giving them money. It's essentially what it is, right? With probably a little bit less nudity than some strip clubs have. And so that's one thing that they don't want 14-year-olds to engage in because you easily can. It's like, there's porn cam sites you can go on. It's the exact same thing, except it's on TikTok, and, your kid does have access to that. So there's some valid concerns there. But I guess, in closing, the main issues is, whether the government has the right to step in. There's a First Amendment right for companies to be able to, for people to be able to receive any information. There might be like political reasons. They don't want certain messaging to get out. One guy was saying that, Palestinians were talked about more on TikTok than any other platform. And so some people that are opposed to that side of the war might not want that certain messaging to go out.
Okay.
Even if China is pushing a message on purpose, we still have the right to hear that message, right? And so that's conflicting. And then if they did go the route of handing the company over to an American company, besides the fact that that American company may be just as harmful to consumers, the logistics are basically impossible. It really is no better than just banning TikTok outright and making them go out of business, because they're not going to hand over the algorithm. China's not going to hand Microsoft or whoever buys it, oh, here's the algorithm. That is the entire app. Is the algorithm by which they feed you content. That's what makes it addicting, and the new company's not going to get that information, right? No. So it's not really going to be the same if an American company has it. And also, TikTok doesn't really work if it's just isolated to America. If America has their own version of TikTok, and it doesn't connect, like you no longer see content from people in other countries, then it's really going to have a different vibe. So logistically, it's not really a viable product on the market if you limit it to just America. So this whole thing seems like it's probably not going to go through, and it's just a publicity stunt.
I think it is. And remember, bad news is good news, right? I mean, how many people are talking about TikTok and other things like that? So once again, when you get so large, any news is good news for you, right? Pretty much. So
something else is going to come around eventually and take it over. It used to be... there was Vine, these things go in cycles. So TikTok is probably not going to be top dog forever. People used to love Facebook, right?
Yep.
And now that's gone by the wayside. So eventually TikTok will just kill itself, and then there'll be something else. But there's always going to be predatory programs out there.
Yeah.
There's no getting around it. Anything else on that?
No.
All right, man.
I'm good, man. I'm good. All right. So the second story we're going to talk about is a woman by the name of Amanda. It's either Chapin or Chapin. So she is married to her husband. Is she still married? I didn't see that they got divorced or anything. She gets a life insurance type of policy on the house. She gets the deed, which she forged.
Oh,
or had forged. Yeah.
Okay.
So the deed she had forged.
Forge a signature? Maybe?
Correct.
Okay.
To get it signed over to her when he dies. And I'm guessing the house was probably worth a decent amount of money. So clearly that alone in and of itself is greed for sure, right? And we've talked about greed before. So then, not once, not twice, but 3 freaking times, she essentially poisons her husband so he's a vet, using his meds that he uses to euthanize dogs or any pet, euthanize animals, and puts it in his coffee. The third time he was in a coma for like 4 days or whatever it said, and blood tests revealed that he had barbiturates in his blood, and they were like meds that are used for euthanasia.
Yep.
And so she ends up getting arrested through the investigative process. They uncover the deed stuff, right? Like, that's weird. And I think it happened, like, the first attempt was, like, recent, or, like, right after the deed was signed over. It was, like, less than a month after that was, like, the first attempt. She gave him, what I read, she gave him those barbiturates, didn't really work out. And then from there on out until now, or recently, the third time was the charm. So
yeah.
I mean, initially when you're reading that, what are your thoughts on that type of attempt? Because we'll get to the charges and stuff. Like, let's hold off on that for a second. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess a couple thoughts. I mean, about like the act itself. You know, she's putting this medicine in the coffee, and I can't imagine the medicine tastes very good. Like, this is why.
That's what I was gonna say.
This is why men should drink black coffee. You know, people give you shit if you're a guy and you say, "Oh, I just take it black." Like, "Oh, you think you're manly, so you take it black." I take it black so that way there's not cream and stuff in there that is diluting the flavor, right? Because, like, if you just have regular coffee, you know what it tastes like. You know, he should have been able to sip on it the first time and been like, "This tastes like pentobarbital."
Yeah.
You know?
For real, yeah.
Like, he should have been, if it tastes like battery acid, and your wife just gave it to you, you should know right after the quitclaim deed was signed. And so I'm surprised that he wasn't able to catch on to that far sooner. And then when it comes to the timeline on this, I mean, it was 9 months after they're married.
Yep.
Signs a quitclaim deed.
Yep.
Right after that, tries to kill him. If you're going to do something like this, you got to exercise some level of patience.
Patience, yes.
Like, if this would have gone according to her plan, then it would have been obvious that it was her. I mean, you look at the timeline of events. By the way, as soon as the coma happened, the children, who are, you know, they're adults, right? But the guy's kids, they knew what was up, so they immediately had a restraining order put against this lady. And then, so if the police would have gone to the kids and said, like, you know, "Do you know anybody that might want to hurt your father?" They'd be like, "Yeah, his wife." They just got married 9 months ago. We tried to tell him she was a gold digger. And by the way, she's 50.
Yeah.
Isn't that a little old to be a gold digger?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on your life situation. You know, I mean, if you are that broke and you need to, like, do your best to try and get the most richest person at your age, I guess. I don't know.
But, like, for that guy, like, guys will look over red flags for women that are really good looking. You know, they'll make that trade-off. But you look at this lady and it's like, man, like, she must have been hilarious, dude. Yeah. She's probably a really good hang, you know?
Dude, you know what? I thought the same thing. I'm like, that's her?
Yeah.
You know? I was like, wow, man, there's got to be something else there, you know? They say personality's part of it, right? So, but, okay, so yes. So I'm glad you brought that up. The kids say something. They kind of get some orders against her. Investigation goes through. So she ends up... So initially, the county attorney ends up wanting to charge her with first-degree homicide, or like attempted homicide, murder, which to me makes sense. Okay, like as far as I know, euthanasia drugs are not a typical drug that you drink, like right?
Schedule 2
right?
drug.
Like, what was your purpose on that? Like, not to help them, I'll tell you that, right?
Yeah.
So tries for that. And then it gets pled down to like a 6-year sentence. 3 of those years are behind bars and 3 are probation. And the defense was like, well, she's a beacon of our community. Like, I remember reading that line of the story. And so, like, he begged the judge to go easy on her because she's a beacon of the community. And I'm thinking, bro, if a beacon of your community is trying to euthanize her husband... I don't want to live in that community. I'd be like, what? For who? I'd say, who you speaking for? Like, that would be my question. If I was a judge, I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Because from the article I read, I didn't see anything on her, like, employer. Like, is she, like, a doctor or something? Did she work with him with vets? Like,
I listened to her, like, last statements before the sentencing, and it was very unsatisfying. I thought that she would, I don't know, try to justify it or something. You know, sometimes people have somewhat justifiable reasons for doing heinous shit like this, right? But she just was talking about how, you know, I just keep looking forward, and I know that since day one, I just thank God for being by my side. It sounded like she was accepting an award.
Yeah.
And she was saying that she has donated a lot of money to charity, right? So I guess that's probably what they were talking about. But, like, rich people, P. Diddy's also donated a lot to charity, I'm sure, right? That's, like, the number one thing that you do.
O.J. Simpson probably did, too.
Exactly. That's what you do. If you know that you're going to try to commit heinous crimes, you donate to charity so that way you can bring it up later in court. That's the oldest trick in the book. It doesn't mean anything to me.
You get a DWI, what's the first thing your lawyer tells you? You go to a treatment. Before our first court thing, you sign up for treatment.
Exactly.
You know why? Because it looks good and it looks proactive, right? So, same concept, dude. Same thing. And
hopefully the judge saw through that.
You're right. You're right, though. Like, I remember she did say, she's like, you know, I thank God and I thank my church for the support. Like, what? What are we talking about here? You just tried killing your husband, man. Like, I'm confused. Like, in the 6-year sentence thing, maybe it's an age thing, but she literally poisoned her husband 3 times.
Yeah.
Not once, 3 times. And how do you not kill him? Like, what are you putting in 2 drops and then 3 the next time and 4 until, like, bro, dump that whole bottle in there. If you know what I mean? Like, are you afraid to do it? Like, I feel like there's enough euthanasia stuff in there. Maybe it would have been the 4th time. Like, maybe the 3rd time if he survived the coma, like, okay, I know, like, it's 3/4 of the bottle, not half the bottle.
You got to get the dosage right.
Yeah.
Just like depression meds, you got to play around with the dosage a little bit.
The problem is that they're going to do an autopsy. Like, the barbiturates thing, they're going to do blood tests after he dies. So you might as well just cut his head off, which will lead into our next story for you folks in a second here. But you might as well just do it.
There's no chance of her getting away with it, right?
0. Makes you wonder where her mindset is, I guess, because, like what? So again, like you said, there's no like winning to doing this.
Yeah.
So why not just, like, take yourself out? You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna do that, like, it's terrible, dude. Like, you hear, like, a lot of these guys that, like, kill themselves or, like, shoot themselves, but they'll, like, kill their fucking dogs and shit, and they'll kill their family before they kill themselves. It's like, what the hell is your problem, dude? Mm-hmm. Like, why'd you have to take everyone else out with you, you know?
Yeah, and I didn't get that sense from her, but it was more similar to whenever you see, like, a school shooter or something, they always then hope that they, if they get caught, they hope that the police shoot them or whatever. Like, once their plan falls through, then they're like, well, I'd rather be dead than in jail. And so I think she legitimately didn't see any holes in her plan. Like, she had 9 months to prepare for this, and she thought she had it perfect, right? Even though a normal person would see that it obviously wasn't going to work out. Once it didn't work out, then she decided that, well, instead of going to jail, then I'm going to try to either legitimately kill myself, or maybe it was a way to just gain sympathy. But it seems to me that she just didn't have a plan B. She's like, I just thought this was going to work. Whatever you're doing in life, you got to have a plan B, guys. Like, it doesn't matter. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, things are going pretty decent for me. I got plans, but I've been watching videos on a guy that does stealth camping. So he'll camp in, like, parking ramps.
What's his name?
I forgot his name, but I'm sure you've seen him before.
Steve?
I think so, yeah.
Does he crack a beer? And, like,
yeah, he does, yep. So I've been watching him, dude, right? Yep. He camps in, like, parking ramps and other public spaces. Yep. And that is my plan B. Like, if things fall through, I know that I'm going to stealth camp.
Yep.
And she didn't have a plan B.
A stealth camp.
Exactly.
That's interesting, you know. And by the way, for those that are have been suicidal in the past, please get help, right? Get that mental health help. That's not what we're saying here. We're just saying, like, one, please don't kill people. And two, if you need help, please go get mental health help. That's all we're asking. So, but no, totally, good for him for surviving. I mean, my guess is it'll probably be a nice, smooth divorce for him, which is not what you hear oftentimes with gold diggers and stuff like that. Typically, they take half. I'm sure she probably.
Can you imagine if she still got half?
Dude, I would be stunned.
What state is it in? If it's in, like, California, he might be screwed.
Yeah, I thought it was the East Coast.
Okay.
But still, I mean, yeah, well, similar to California, a lot of them are also, like,
New York's got it pretty bad.
Dude, you're screwed, bro. So, yeah. But anyway, awesome. Anything else to add with that story, I guess?
No, I don't think with her, no.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, so I guess great for her getting 3 years. 3 years 3 years probation.
That's pretty amazing, man. I mean, I know it was a plea deal.
Yeah.
But that just seems criminal. That someone can
absolutely
get 3 years, and
it's part of that winning percentage that the attorney can put on there.
I've been thinking about that a lot since last episode, and I've always known that that's what they do. They plead it out, but I never thought about the ulterior motive of the prosecuting attorney to be able to just I got a guilty plea. Do you think that started out as just a way to unclog the justice system? Because if everything went to trial, I mean, how could you even try everybody?
Yeah.
But then later on, it just got corrupted to be like a winning percentage thing.
I think over time, like, especially now with the amount of crime rates and stuff going up, like, it's not just law enforcement that's short-staffed. Everybody's short-staffed. And, I think a lot of it is push them out. Everyone puts on probation. Like, everyone's on probation, man. I mean, it's like having just like a disease that everyone has, like probation. Like, everyone has it. So, but yeah. Anyway, okay. So, kind of what I alluded to from the second story there. Third story is about a man in Orange County who essentially went homicidal, and he decapitated his parents in a trailer park. So they lived in a trailer park. First, it looked like, I believe it was his sister or stepsister called and said that, like, he went off the rails, he's nuts.
Yeah, I think he sent pictures of it to, I thought it was a cousin.
Cousin,
so he sent pictures of his bloody mother to the cousin.
Yes.
And she called the police and said he's mentally ill. He's been violent in the past.
Yep. So they go over there, which, by the way, very common call for, like, someone like us, like people in crisis, happens all the time, right? Maybe, like, if she sent me a picture of a decapitated head, I might, like, approach that a little different than having a conversation with this guy off the bat. But hey, so anyway, then they get a second call from a guy in the same trailer park, basically saying that this bloodied guy is screaming and running after people with what he called a fork, or that's what he reported it as. I mean, maybe he had a fork and he was stabbing his mom's head with it. I don't know. So police show up. They find the guy. He's, like, singing. So he's singing Tina Turner, What's Love Got to Do with It?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people should probably know that song. And it's interesting because even though he's psychotic, he's in, like, some psychosis, I wonder if there was, like, some weird, like, relationship thing with, like, between his mom and him, or, like, not like incest. Like, I'm not talking, like, incest, but, like, they were having troubles with their relationship or something, and that, like, just caused them to snap,
Yeah, well, the point that he was singing, well, I watched the body cam footage, did you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So what happened was he had taken a golf cart in this community. One of the maintenance people had a golf cart they would drive around. So he stole that. He was driving around. The cops show up, and he's all bloody, and he gets off, and he's walking towards the cops. Gets shot. The cops shoot him, and then he's on the ground. And as they're arresting him, as he's been shot, that's when he's singing these tunes. Yeah, it was whoever you said, and then also Stevie Wonder was one of them. Yeah, Tina Turner and Stevie Wonder songs as he was getting shot. I never considered if that was in relation to why he did that to his parents. And that's the biggest problem for me, why I had less interest in this story than the previous one, because I always want to know why they did it. Like, I just feel like if you get convicted of a crime, you should just be required to just say, here's why I did it. Okay, like, there's nothing I can do about it now, right? I just want to hear what their mindset was, and we don't know what happened, right?
No, because unfortunately the victims are dead.
Yeah, but he never said anything.
Correct. So we don't know exactly, like, what the conversation was. We don't know, like, I mean, I'm sure he was on some type of drugs too or something, but we don't know that. And speaking to that, you know, the cops went into the house, and then they did see Mom's head.
On the table.
On the table.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of a case that I learned about. Didn't happen in the city I work for. But I recently took a crime scene training, and the person that was leading it talked about this guy pretty much did the same thing, cut his mom's head off, but he actually put it in the dishwasher and, like, ran it. So he, like, you know how those little prongs to, like, hold the plates? Yeah, he, like, stuck it on the prong. And, like, washed her head. Because they went inside and they're like, you know, where's the head at or whatever, and they opened the dishwasher and there's her head in there. So,
man, it's just like, what is going through their mind? Like, that's when you know someone's completely unhinged.
Well, and what's even more fucked about that is, like, it's possible he might not even be fit to stand trial, right? Like, think about that. Like, they might not even get justice for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
well, it's not like if someone's not fit to stand trial, you don't just say, okay, well, be on
have
your
fun,
way.
Go frolic. No,
I've heard that, like, there was one of the school shooters, man, I don't remember any of the fucking names of these schools or whatever, but it was one of them where this guy was in the interrogation room. You can watch all the footage, and he was trying to kind of make it work that way where he would get found not fit. So he was trying to act crazy when he wasn't. I guess you could say he was crazy, right? But he wasn't like completely unhinged and like out of his mind, right? He was perfectly sane in his mind.
He was trying to play it off a little bit.
Yeah. So he's like in the room, shaking.
Yeah.
And then when the cop's talking to him, he's just like looking at his hand and they know a crazy person when they see one and they know that this is just bullshit. Eventually they get him to drop the act. But in the video that I was talking about, they mentioned this is what he's trying to do because people think that it's better to be found not fit for trial and be found insane because then you don't have to go to prison. But to go to one of these mental facilities where these people go to, if you are a sane person, that is a much more harrowing experience than actually going to prison. That is no place to be for somebody that actually is sane. If you do manage to fake your way there, I think you'd quickly regret it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with that being said, like, kind of going into a segue, like, what are your thoughts on, like, the death penalty? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, as far as, like, morally, I think it's fine. Of course, if it's something where 100% that the person actually did it. But, man, there's, like, so many instances of people being found innocent, like, 30 years after they're convicted, that's when it obviously gets iffy. But it's like, hey, if the person pleads guilty or they admit their guilt and, like, that they did it, then I guess, that's fine. That's really how I think about it. But there's so many times you see videos of people getting released after 30 years. They knew the entire time they're innocent. And then they just have to act like they're not pissed. They might get $1 million or something like that as like repayment. And they're like, yeah, I'm glad the truth came out. But inside, they got to be so fucking mad. But they act so okay with it.
Yeah. It kind of makes me... And, maybe in a later episode we'll talk about this gentleman. I know we have one coming up in a little bit, but Dahmer, right? So Dahmer, if people don't know Jeffrey Dahmer, great series on Netflix about him. It's literally called Monster, and then it's titled Dahmer. Very graphic, but Dahmer was, and I think this is just how psycho he was. he was totally open to talking about why he did certain things. And a lot of it for him was, well, I mean, he honestly, like he blamed, and it's kind of strange, he blamed a lot of it on his homosexuality. So he basically said, like, a lot of his things that he was wrestling with was because of his homosexuality. So there's, again, you kind of notice that weird, like, things that are revolved around sex or, like, sexual things. It, like, there's a lot of, like, harm that can be done with that. But, you know, I remember I was watching a documentary or, like, an interview with him, and basically he's like, you know, I killed this guy because I wanted control over him, and I wanted to do things to him that I know he wouldn't want done if he was alive, and I wanted to have full control. And the only way I can have that is if I kill him. And not only that, like, he was very into, like, the innards and stuff. And so he had no problem admitting to everything he's done. Like, zero problem. But,
Yeah.
And he would admit, he's like, I knew it was wrong. Like, socially, I knew it was wrong. But there was nothing to stop me from doing it. And he also admitted that he would have harmed more people if he was left out.
Yeah.
Because he's like, it's an urge that he just couldn't hold back.
And that's the kind of insight that I want from every criminal that does something like this.
Yeah.
Like, I wish we could get that from that guy. There was another documentary about Ted Bundy, and he did the same thing where he sat down with his journalists that would come and visit him throughout a period of time. And you got to actually hear Ted Bundy talk about everything, except he was a little bit different because he would talk about it in, like, a hypothetical.
Yes.
So, like, he
Yep.
everything in extreme detail, except he wouldn't say that he did do that. It was just like a weird way of, like, I don't know, internally, like, saying he didn't admit to it, but, like, still being able to get his story out. By the way, O.J. Simpson did the same thing.
Yeah.
He wrote an entire book, If I Did It, and he did an interview where he talked to a reporter, like, in the hypothetical. Like, if I was there, I was in the back alley of my car, and I opened my glove box, and there was a knife there, and I went to the back. Like, extreme detail, basically confessing to everything, but he didn't say it was him. But that's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, and, you know, the other thing, too, is, like, so with Ted, what was interesting with Ted is Ted Bundy was an extreme narcissist. And again, the sexuality thing. He was very much into porn, and he, like, it wasn't enough for him. Like, he constantly thought about, like, raping women and taking advantage of them sexually, okay? And so with Ted, the person, I know what you're talking about because I saw it too. With someone like Ted, he thinks what he's doing is so grandiose that it should, like, he had the master plan. Like, he knew what he was doing, and, like, these people are idiots. Like, I took advantage of them because I'm smarter than all of them type of thing. And complete narcissist. Like, so they played to that and was like, yeah, like, man, if a person was that smart, like, what do you think they would do? And then he would tap into that because he'd, like, it made him feel good, right? So they took advantage of that for him to talk about this. And very interesting with him, Ted Bundy. And I think still to the day that he died, he still denied actually doing, like, not fully committing to his own doing that, right? Talking about it in third person he would, but not like, yes, I did that, you know.
There must be some weird mental thing where there's almost two sides to his psyche where, like, he almost didn't want to admit to himself that he did it in a way. But you got to admit, the guy was pretty smart.
Super smart.
How many times did he escape jail? And, like, he would escape jail and then he got pulled over after he did that and still talked his way out of it. Like, that's a fascinating story, that guy.
Well, you know, that's honestly, like, and that goes back to even, like, basic law enforcement training. So they say straight up, they're like, there is no such thing as a basic traffic stop. So, the guy's name is slipping me right now, but the Unabomber, the guy that bombed Ted Kaczynski, got stopped for speeding by a state trooper, and that's how he got arrested. So
you never know.
You never know, you know, And like Ed Kemper. Man, there are so many serial killers that we'll talk about on the show that I could go down so many rabbit holes with, but we won't today. We'll save that for later. But anyway, going back, we'll see. I didn't see, this is so recent, it's still going through, I believe, right? Like, he hasn't gotten the full process yet. Yeah.
Maybe the cousins will come out and talk more about his past, because it obviously has a history of being, crazy and, violent. So hopefully more insight comes out, because it's pretty unsatisfying how little we know.
Yeah.
For such a crazy, heinous act.
Well, and it didn't, all I remember is it mainly talked about his mom that was beheaded. I didn't see too much on, like, his dad. I believe it was that he also beheaded, because he beheaded both of them.
That's what the
right?
headline said.
That's what yeah. So I didn't see much on that, but, we'll see what happens. Maybe he'll get 6 years as well. I mean, maybe a little more because he actually followed through with it. But
they might have showed mercy on the previous lady because she was older. Like, I don't know. I mean, you got to think that sometimes that plays into it.
Yeah.
If it was like a 20-year-old or 25-year-old that tried to kill somebody in their family, like, I think they would get more time. But when you have, like, an old lady in front of you and she presents pretty well in court, like,
yeah.
I think the aesthetics of a person can definitely impact the sentence that you get. Yeah.
I'll say one more thing on this, too, is what's interesting to me. So, like, we just kind of talked about Dahmer for a second. So, Dahmer, in his court, towards the end, when the victims were given all their victim statements of, speaking for the dead, right, the family members, Dahmer purposely took his glasses off. And he never really admitted to why he did that, but a lot of people speculate it's because he couldn't face what he's finally done. I don't know if I fully believe that, because he has said several times that he just blacks out and just does it. Like, there's no remorse. And that's what a psychopath is, right? There's zero, like, I cut your arm off, that sucks. Like, I'm just going to walk away now type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my God, that sucks, Like, there's none of that. So, all interesting stuff. Yeah, is there anything else you want to add, man? Is there anything to that story? I mean, trailer park. Maybe Theo Von grew up in the same trailer park. I don't know. We'll hear something, but,
No, man, I think that's it.
Okay, awesome. Cool.
All right, well, I guess this episode will come out probably on Wednesday, but we upload shorts every single day. If you've made it this far, subscribe, and we appreciate the support. Thank you.